At my son's wedding, he secretly slipped sedatives into my drink, but just minutes later, he suffered the consequences himself. He thought I didn't know, but a mysterious photographer helped me, someone he never could have expected. What happened next made everyone at the reception scream in horror. This is the unbelievable story of my family. But before I tell you what happened at that reception, let me know in the comments, where are you watching this from? And have you ever had family betray you when you least expected it? The Copley Plaza knew how to throw a wedding. Crystal chandeliers hung from 20-feet ceilings, casting warm light over round tables draped in ivory silk. 300 guests filled the grand ballroom. Old Boston money mixed with new, the kind of crowd where everyone knew everyone's net worth before their names. The cream of New England society, all here to watch my son Trevor marry into the Ashford family. Howard Ashford had built a software empire, 3 generations deep. His daughter Olivia sat at the head table, now radiant in her Vera Wang gown, laughing at something Trevor whispered in her ear. My son, 33 years old, junior partner at Brennan Industries. He looked good in his tuxedo. Everything about this night was excellent. The food, the flowers, the jazz ensemble. The $85,000 for the venue alone. Worth every penny to see Trevor this happy, or was he? The main course had just been cleared away. Herb-crusted lamb, probably more per plate than most people spent on groceries in a week. Now came the real shithost. Speeches, cake cutting. Frank Martinez caught my eye from beside me. My best friend for 40 years. Hell of a party, Doug, he said, his Boston accent thick after a couple drinks. Helen would have loved this. Trevor's mother dead, 17 years now. Some days I still reached for the phone to call her. She'd be proud. Frank raised his champagne flute. You did good, raising him alone. Had I watched Trevor across the table, fidgeting with his champagne glass, rolling the stem between his fingers. Nervous energy radiated off him. Cold feet? Frank asked. Maybe. Big day. But something nagged at me. Trevor had been tense for months, ever since March when he'd stopped by unexpectedly and I'd been on the phone. Wedding stress, I'd told myself. Olivia's family had opinions about everything. Remember your wedding? Frank grinned. You threw up twice. Thanks for that. But I smiled, remembering Helen finding me in the church bathroom, green-faced. She'd laughed and kissed my forehead. God, I missed her. A waiter appeared, pouring champagne into crystal flutes. French vintage. The good stuff. I'd signed that check without blinking. To the happy couple, someone called out prematurely, glasses raised anyway. I turned to tell Frank a story about the jazz band. Mid-sentence, something caught my eye. Movement in my peripheral vision. Trevor's hand reaching toward the champagne glasses. Or was it? They were identical. Same crystal. Same golden bubbles. I blinked. Cliff's hand was back in his lap. Must have been my imagination. The lighting, the champagne, the emotion. But Trevor stared at those glasses with an intensity that made my stomach tighten. Something felt off. I turned back to Frank, finished my story. He laughed. Normal conversation, except nothing felt normal. Around us, 300 conversations hummed. Olivia took selfies with bridesmaids. The Ashfords held court, probably discussing their latest acquisition. Someone's glass clinketed too loud, drawing applause. Everything was perfect. So why did my gut say otherwise? Trevor shifted, touched his temple, smiled at Olivia, but his eyes kept drifting to those champagne glasses, as if waiting for something or checking. I should have asked him right then, "Son, what's going on?" But I didn't. The waiter returned, topping off already full glasses. The quartet played something slower. Couples stood to dance. Eleanor Ashford dabbed happy tears. My phone buzzed against the tablecloth. Subtle, lost in celebration noise, but I felt it. A text message from a number I'd saved 6 months ago, a number that shouldn't contact me during Trevor's wedding. I picked up the phone, read it, 5 words in capitals, and everything changed. Your son drugged your glass. 5 words, all capitals, from a number I'd saved as O&R 6 months ago. My heart stopped, then restarted with a painful thud in my throat. I read it again. The words didn't change. My eyes moved to the champagne flutes on the white tablecloth. 2 identical glasses, golden liquid, perfect bubbles. One of them, which one? Trevor's hand movement replayed in my mind. That reach I'd caught while talking to Frank, not imagination. Rule, my son, had put something in one of these glasses. I glanced at Trevor. He sat 3 feet away talking to Olivia, but his eyes kept darting to those flutes, watching, waiting for me to drink, waiting for his father to poison himself. The realization settled cold. This wasn't impulse. This was planned. The tension for months, questions about my will, the way he'd changed after March when he'd overheard that phone call. He knew about Owen, and he was terrified enough to do this. Frank talked beside me, oblivious. 300 guests celebrated. No one knew except me and Trevor and whoever sent that text. Owen, the photographer I'd hired, the son I'd known 6 months, standing somewhere in this ballroom with a camera and a clear view of our table. He'd seen Trevor do it, and he'd warned me. But I had a problem. 2 identical glasses, one poisoned. Trevor watching. I couldn't grab both. Couldn't cause a scene. Not here. Not at his wedding. I needed a distraction. Eleanor Ashford pushed back her chair. She stood, smoothing her navy dress, heading toward the restrooms. Her path took her past our table. Trevor noticed immediately, status conscious since childhood. Mrs. Ashford, he said, turning completely away. It's a beautiful dress. 5 seconds. My left hand to my glass, right hand to Trevor's. Lifts simultaneously. Slide across silk poison one to his spot, cliff one to mine. The champagne barely rippled. Rotate to hide fingerprints. Set down. Same spacing. Same angle. 5 seconds. Done. Trevor turned back, eyes to the glasses. No suspicion. His shoulders relaxed. The microphone crackled. Ladies and gentlemen, time for our toast to the bride and groom. The ballroom quieted. 300 conversations died. Chairs scraped. Trevor reached for his flute. The poised one now sitting in front of him. He raised it high. Crystal, catching light, smiling. To family, he said. Voice warm and sincere and completely false. To the people who are always there for you, who'd do anything for you. The irony cut deep. I raised my clean glass. To family, 300 guests raised theirs. Crystal glinted. Trevor looked directly at me, smiled that Santo Father smile I'd seen his whole life, and drank. The champagne went down smooth. I watched his throat work, watched him lower the glass, smile at Olivia, smile at the applauding guests. He didn't wheeze, he didn't pause, didn't notice anything wrong. Neither did the 300 people around us. Only I knew what had just happened. Only I knew my son had just consumed the drug meant for me. Frank leaned over. Nice toast, short and sweet. Yeah, I managed. Trevor set his empty glass down, reached for Olivia's hand. He looked relaxed now, confident. The hard part was over, he probably thought. In an hour his father would be slurring, stumbling, making a fool of himself in front of Boston's elite. He had no idea. I watched him laugh at something, Olivia whispered. Checked his watch, probably calculating timing. 20 minutes. 30 servers cleared champagne flutes. The jazz quartet shifted tempo. Guests hit the dance floor. Trevor touched his tempo briefly, blinked there, just a flicker. Nothing anyone else would notice, but I knew the drug was starting. Give him a chance to leave before disaster hit. But the larger part, the part that had just watched my own child try to poison me, that part wanted to see this through. He'd made his choice. Now he'd live with it. The champagne settled in my stomach like lead. I sat there watching Trevor, and all I could think was, what did he use? What drug? What dosage? What timeline? Fast acting or slow? Would it hit him all at once or creep up gradually? I had no idea, and that uncertainty nodded at me. Frank leaned closer. You sure you're all right? You look like you're about to jump out of your skin. Fine, I said too quickly. Just emotional. My boy's married now. Ha. Frank didn't sound convinced, but he let it drop. Dessert service began. Servers appeared with chocolate plates. I didn't touch mine. My eyes stayed on Trevor. At 8:22, he shifted in his seat. Nothing dramatic, just uncomfortable. Then his hand came up to his temple, rubbed it briefly. My pulse quickened. Olivia was showing bridesmaids something on her phone, laughing, completely unaware her husband was falling apart 3 feet away. Trevor blinked hard. Once, twice, like clearing something from his vision. 8:25. Maybe Olivia finally noticed. You okay? Yeah. Trevor's voice sounded steady, just warm. All these people want me to ask them to turn up the AC. No, I'm fine. He smiled, convincing enough, but I saw his hand tremble, reaching for his water glass, saw him concentrate not to spill. The drug was working, spreading through his bloodstream, and I could only watch. The MC took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, the best man would like to say a few words." Ryan stood, Trevor's college roommate, corporate lawyer. He'd buy time. Time for the drug to take deeper hold. Ryan launched into a story about Trevor's terrible cooking. The room laughed. Trevor laughed too, but it sounded off, delayed, like processing everything a half-second slower. 8:32. Another story about spring break in Miami. More laughter. Trevor's laugh came again, but his eyes were unfocused now. That glassy quality that meant the drug was winning. Frank chuckled. "Ryan's killing it." "Yeah, I managed." 8:35. Trevor touched his face, ran his hand down his cheek like checking if it was still there. "Stand up," I thought. "Make an excuse. Go to the bathroom. Leave before this gets worse." But he didn't, probably thinking it would pass. Just nerves, just champagne, just heat. 8:40. Ryan wrapped up with a toast. 300 glasses raised. Trevor raised his water glass, but his hand shook noticeably. Olivia saw it. "Honey, you're shaking." "I'm fine." Sharper than intended. "He just need to give my speech." The MC returned. "Thank you, Ryan. And now the groom would like to say a few words." "Don't," I thought. "Sit down." But Trevor was already standing. He gripped the table edge briefly, steadying himself, trying to look casual. Then he walked toward the front, toward the 6-tier wedding cake dominating the display table. White fondant, handcrafted sugar flowers that took bakers a week to create. Perfect backdrop for a speech, he'd said during rehearsal. Perfect backdrop for a disaster, I thought. Now he positioned himself beside the cake, took the microphone from the stand, smiled at the crowd. That practiced camera-ready smile perfected over 33 years, but his eyes were glazed, unfocused, pupils maybe dilated. Round us, 300 guests waited. Olivia beamed from her seat. The Ashfords sat at attention, ready to hear their new son-in-law's heartfelt words. No one knew, no one saw what I saw. Trevor swayed, just barely, almost imperceptible. He opened his mouth, and I knew watching him struggle to focus, that the next 5 minutes would destroy everything he'd spent his life building. But to understand why I let this happen, why I swapped those glasses instead of stopping him, I need to take you back 6 months to November, to a phone call that shattered my world. Let me pause here before Trevor's collapse and tell you about mine. It was a Tuesday afternoon, 4:30, maybe 4:45. I sat in my corner office at Brennan Industries, reviewing fourth-quarter projections. Rain streaked the windows. Boston, in November, gray, cold, miserable. My secretary buzzed. "Mr. Brennan, there's a woman online, too. Says it's urgent, personal." I almost told her to take a message. "She says her name is Margaret O'Brien. She says you'll remember." My hand froze. Margaret O'Brien, Maggie. I hadn't heard that name in 35 years. I picked up the receiver. "This is Douglas Brennan." "Hello, Douglas." Her voice came through weaker than I remembered, but unmistakable. "It's been a long time. 35 years, Maggie." My throat felt tight. "How are you?" A bitter laugh. "Dying, actually. That's why I'm calling." "What?" "The pancreatic cancer stage for hospice at Mass General. 2 weeks, maybe? 3. She paused. "I'm not calling for sympathy, Douglas. I'm calling because I have something to tell you. Something I should have told you 35 years ago." My heart hammered. "Maggie, when I married Charles Davenport, I was pregnant. The world tilted. With your child, everything stopped. His name's Owen." Maggie continued, voice steady like she'd rehearsed it. "Owen Richardson. I gave him my maiden name after Charles died. He's 35 years old. A photographer. Kind, talented, independent." A pause. "And he's your son, Douglas. He's always been your son." "That's impossible," you would have told me. "My family was drowning. My father owed $60,000 to the wrong people. Gambling debts. They threatened to kill him. Charles Davenport offered to pay everything if I married him. But you were pregnant. I found out 3 days before the wedding." Her voice cracked. "I didn't tell you because I was terrified. Charles had money power. You were 25, working construction, barely making rent. He would have destroyed you and our baby would have been caught in the middle, labeled a bastard. You stole 35 years from me." I know she was crying. I know what I did, but I gave him life and gave him love. I raised a good man, and now before I die, I want him to know his real father. He deserves the truth. So do you. Does he know? I told him 3 days ago. He's processing, angry, confused. But he's a good man, Douglas. I pressed my forehead against the cold window glass. Charles never knew. No, he died thinking Owen was his heart attack 10 years ago. Another pause. Owen's number is 67,517. Call him, please, before it's too late. Maggie, I have to go now. Her breathing had gotten labored. The pain, the morphine, isn't enough anymore. A long exhale. I'm sorry, Douglas, for everything. For the life you should have had. For the son you should have raised. But most of all, I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to choose you, Sachem. I always loved you. Even after everything, even married to someone else, even lying to my own son. I loved you. The line went quiet except for her breathing. Shallow, rattling. Goodbye, Douglas. Cliff. I stood there holding the phone until the dial tone turned into that obnoxious beeping. Then I set it down and sat in my leather chair. I had a son, a 35-year-old son I'd never met, never held, never watched grow up, never taught to throw a baseball or navigate the impossible maze of being a man. Maggie had stolen that from me, or saved me from it. Maybe both. 2 weeks later, Margaret O'Brien died. I went to the funeral, sat in the back row, St. Catherine's Church in Charlestown. Small service, maybe 40 people, and there at the front, giving the eulogy, was a man I'd never met. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair graying at the temples, standing with easy confidence that comes from knowing who you are. He talked about his mother, her strength, her sacrifice, her love. His voice was steady, no tears, just quiet dignity. And when he turned to look out at the moors, I saw it. My eyes, the same hazel green eyes saw every morning in the mirror. Maggie's smile, the one I'd fallen in love with 35 years ago. Owen, my son. The DNA test came back 99.9% match. I had a son I never knew existed. 1 week after burying his mother, Owen agreed to meet me. He wanted answers. So did I. What we both got was awkward silence and cold coffee. Café Allers in Cambridge, neutral territory, a place neither of us had memories attached to. Mid-December, 2 weeks before Christmas. The cafe had strung lights in the windows, but they felt garish against the grey slush outside. I arrived 30 minutes early, ordered black coffee I didn't drink, sat in a corner booth rehearsing opening lines that all sounded hollow. I'm sorry, didn't cover 35 years, I didn't know. Sounded like an excuse. Let me explain. Implied there was an explanation that would make any of this okay. At 2 o'clock. Exactly. The door opened. Cold air rushed in, and there he was, tall, maybe 6, broad shoulders under a worn canvas jacket, dark hair, some grey at the temples, jeans and boots, a camera bag slung over one shoulder like it was part of his body, and my eyes staring back at me from a stranger's face. He saw me immediately cross the cafe in 4 strides. Didn't offer his hand. I'm Owen Douglas. My voice came out rough. Thank you for coming. He slid into the booth across from me, ordered coffee from the server without looking at the menu. When she left, he just sat there studying me, taking in every detail like he was cataloguing them. You looked like the pictures Mom kept, he said finally. Older, but the same. She kept pictures, one hidden in a book. I found it when I was packing up her apartment. His jaw tightened. You were young, 25 maybe? Standing in front of some construction site, smiling like you owned the world. I didn't own anything back then. Yeah, well you do now. He gestured vaguely. Brennan Industries Manufacturing. I googled you. Net worth estimated somewhere north of 50 million. Owen, 35 years. His voice, it was level, controlled, but I heard the anger underneath. You had 35 years you could have spent with me. Birthdays, graduations, teaching me to drive, all of it gone. I didn't know. The words felt inadequate. Your mother never told me. I swear to God, if I'd known, you'd have fought Charles Davenport for custody. A 25-year-old construction worker against a millionaire with lawyers. He shook his head. Ma made the choice she thought protected us both. Maybe she was right. Maybe she was wrong. But she's dead now, so we'll never know. His coffee arrived. He doctored it with cream and sugar. Mechanical, like he was buying time. Why did you agree to meet me? I asked. Because she asked me to. The last thing she said before the morphine took her under for good. Meet your father. Give him a chance. So here I am giving you a chance. I want to help. Whatever you need. Money for your business. A house. A car. Stop. The word came sharp. I don't need your money. I don't want it, Owen. I have resources. I've survived 35 years without Douglas Brennan's resources. I'll survive the rest just fine. He leaned forward. I built my photography business from nothing. From nothing. No family money, no connections, no handouts, just work. And it's successful. I'm successful on my own. The emphasis on those last 3 words cut deep. Then what do you want from me? He sat back, studied his coffee. When he looked up, something in his expression had softened. Just slightly. I don't know yet. Maybe nothing. Maybe it's just answers about who you are. Why Mum loved you enough to carry your secret for 35 years if you're worth knowing. That's fair. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through photos, turned the screen toward me. Landscapes, portraits, weddings, each one stunning, professional. The kind of work that didn't need a famous name attached to sell. This is what I do, he said. This is who I am. Not your heir, not your replacement son. Just Owen, a photographer who happens to share your DNA. It's beautiful work, really. I know. No arrogance, just fact. I'm good at what I do. We sat in silence. The cafe hummed. Around us. Other conversations, other lives. Can I buy you coffee? I asked finally. Next week? Same time? Same place, just to talk. He considered long enough that I thought he'd say no. I'm not calling you Dad. I'm not taking your money. And I'm not replacing Charles Davenport, even if he wasn't biologically mine. He raised me. That counts for something. I understand. But coffee once a week. We'll see where it goes.
Thank you.
He stood, pulled on his jacket, picked up his camera bag. Don't thank me yet. I might decide you're not worth the effort. He left. I sat there with my cold coffee and watched him disappear into the December afternoon. Over the next 4 months, we met every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Same booth, same order. Conversations that started stilted slowly became easier. Not easy, but easier. Owen told me about his mother's life with Charles, about discovering photography in high school, about building his business one wedding at a time. I listened. Didn't try to fix anything. Didn't offer advice. Just listened. And slowly, Owen started texting between Wednesdays, photos of jobs, questions about equipment, small things. I didn't tell Trevor any of this. Didn't mention Owen at all. I told myself I was waiting for the right time, that I'd explain everything. Once Owen and I found our footing, but the truth was simpler and more cowardly. I was afraid Trevor couldn't handle it. Turned out I was right. 3 months before his wedding, Trevor discovered my secret, and instead of asking me about it, he decided to destroy me. It was a Saturday afternoon in March, early spring in Boston, cold sunshine, patches of dirty snow in the shade. I was in my home office, on the phone with Owen. We'd been meeting weekly since December, and he'd finally asked for advice about expanding his photography business. I'd offered to co-sign a loan, not a gift, a business investment with repayment terms. It was the first financial help he'd accepted in 4 months. Trevor had a key to my house. Had since he was 16. I never thought to take it back. Why would I? I didn't hear him come in. I didn't hear him climb the stairs. He didn't know he was standing outside my office door until it was too late. Owen, listen, I said, reviewing paperwork on my screen. 75,000 is significant, but your business plan is solid. Revenue projections are conservative. Owen's voice came through the speaker. I just don't want you to think I'm taking advantage. You're not. This is business. You'll pay it back with interest. I'm co-signing, not gifting. Still feels weird. You being my father and all. You're my son, my firstborn. The word came naturally. I missed 35 years with you. If I can help you build something now, I want to, but on your terms. We talked another 10 minutes about interest rates and schedules. Professional, exactly how Owen wanted it. When I hung up, I felt good, like maybe we were finally making progress. I had no idea Trevor had heard every word. Later, much later, after everything fell apart, he told me he'd come by to discuss the venue payment. $15,000 due Monday. He'd wanted to ask if I could cover it, normal father-son stuff, but he'd heard me on the phone. Heard my son and firstborn and $75,000, and his brain did the math wrong. He stood outside my door, listening, not knocking, just listening, and with each word, the story in his mind got darker. Another son, a secret son, an older son, firstborn, which made Trevor what? second replacement, and $75,000. That was real money, the kind that said this Owen person mattered. What else was I giving him? Part of the company, part of the estate. Half of everything Trevor thought was his. Instead of knocking, instead of asking Dad, "Who's Owen?" Instead of letting me explain the loan was co-signed, not gifted, that my will hadn't changed, that Trevor was still my heir. Instead, Trevor turned around, walked downstairs, let himself out, got in his car, and drove away. Then he went hunting. Owen Photographer Boston brought up Richardson Photography immediately. Professional website, portfolio, about page, with owner's photo. Owen Richardson, 35, 62C, dark hair, my eyes staring from the screen. Trevor sat in his car for an hour looking at that photo, zooming in, comparing it to pictures of me at that age. Undeniable. Then he checked his wedding vendor list. The photographer I'd recommended 3 months earlier, Richardson Photography, Owen Richardson. I'd planted my secret son at his wedding. That's what Trevor thought that I'd used the reception to introduce. Owen publicly to claim my firstborn and humiliate Trevor in front of the Ashfords and Boston society. It was paranoid, wrong, based on half a conversation through a door. But Trevor believed it. Over the next 3 months, he researched sedatives, found one that dissolved in champagne, calculated dosing, planned timing, all to drug his own father, to make me look drunk, incompetent, unfit to run the company, or change my will to force my hand, before I could give everything to Owen. He never asked, never verified, never gave me a chance to explain. Owen wanted nothing except a relationship. That $75,000 was a business loan, that my will was unchanged. He just acted out of fear, out of jealousy, out of 33 years of being my only son, and suddenly discovering he wasn't. Trevor didn't confront me, didn't ask questions. Instead, my son spent 3 months planning to poison me at his own wedding. What he didn't know was that his photographer, the vendor I'd recommended, was the very brother he was trying to erase, and that Owen Richardson had a clear view of the hit through a camera lens. Now you understand why I let it happen, why I swapped those glasses. Let me bring you back to that ballroom. 8:45 p.m., Trevor stood at the front beside the display table. Fad 60 masterpiece wrapped in white fondant decorated with handcrafted sugar flowers. Perfect backdrop for a speech. He tapped the microphone. 300 faces turned. "Thank you all for being here tonight." His voice carried strong. "He means the world to Olivia and me." Normal practices, but the words came out slightly, thick, like his tongue was too heavy. He blinked hard once, twice. I watched from the head, watched the drug work through his system. "My father, Douglas Brennan, taught me everything about family." Treb gestured toward me about loyalty, about carrying on a legacy. Guests smiled, nodded, expected heartfelt gratitude, but Trevor's hand gripped the microphone tighter, knuckles white. "He taught me that blood matters, that family is everything, that legacy defines us." The tone had shifted, something harder underneath. Frank glanced at me. I kept my face neutral. Trevor swayed slightly, caught himself on the cake table edge. "I've spent my whole life trying to live up to his expectations, trying to be worthy of the Brennan name, trying to deserve everything he's built." His voice was getting louder, less controlled. Olivia stood halfway up. "Trevin, honey." He waved her off, didn't look at her. But apparently that's not enough. Bitterness came through raw. Because no matter what I do, no matter how hard I work, there's always someone else. Murmurs rippled through guests. This wasn't wedding speech territory anymore. Eleanor Ashford looked at Howard. His face had gone tight. Someone who didn't have to work for it. Trevor continued, eyes unfocused, glazed. Someone who just exists and gets everything. "Trevor." Olivia was standing now. "Maybe you should sit." "I'm fine," louder than intended. The microphone amplified it. "I just need to say something." 300 guests sat in uncomfortable silence. This wasn't funny. This was a breakdown. I sat frozen. Part of me wanted to walk over, take the microphone, end this. But I didn't move. He'd made his choice 3 months ago. Now he'd live with it. Trevor touched his face, ran his hand down his cheek like checking if it was still there. "Do you know what it's like?" Almost talking to himself. "To find out you're being replaced, that your father has another." He caught himself. Some last shred of control, but too late. The words were out. The ballroom had gone completely silent. 300 people holding their breath. Trevor swayed harder. His hand slipped on the stand. He grabbed it with both hands to stay upright. "I heard him on the phone," he said, voice slurring badly. "Talking to him." "You're my firstborn," he said. "Firstborn?" Gasps from the crowd. Heads turning toward me. Frank's hand on my shoulder. "Doug, what's he talking about?" I didn't answer, just watched Trevor unravel. Olivia had both hands over her mouth. Eleanor looked faint. Howard was half out of his seat. Trevor's eyes found mine across the ballroom, glassy, accusing, betrayed. "Dad," he said into the microphone. The word echoed, loud, clear. "I know about him. I know about your other son." 300 guests went silent. His death. Olivia's face drained of color, and Trevor swayed one more time. His knees buckled. He grabbed for the stand, for the table. Then everything happened in slow motion. Trevor's body pitched forward, no control, dead weight. His arms flailed out, grasping at nothing. The microphone stayed clutched in his right hand. Still on, still, broadcasting, face first toward the cake. His forehead hit the top tier first. The impact cracked the white fondant like ice. Then his full weight followed, upper body plunging into 6 tiers of careful craftsmanship. The cascade was immediate. Tier 6 caved on impact. Handcrafted sugar flowers exploded outward like shrapnel. White buttercream erupted in every direction. Tier 5 buckled under the weight. The support structure, thin wooden dowels the baker had carefully measured and placed, snapped like matchsticks. Tiers 4 and 3 went next. Domino effect. Each layer sliding sideways, collapsing into the one below. The beautiful geometric precision destroyed in seconds. The bottom tiers couldn't hold. Too much weight. Too much momentum. The entire display table shuddered. Then everything buttercream sprayed outward like a bomb blast. White frosting hit the floor, the nearby chairs, the front row of guests. Someone screamed. And beneath the white-red velvet interior exposed itself. Bright crimson cake layers visible through the destruction. Red and white, mixing together in a way that looked disturbingly like a crime scene, like something violent had happened here, which in a way it had. Edible gold leaf, the kind that cost $50 per sheet, floated through the air like confetti, catching the chandelier light, drifting down onto the wreckage. Those handcrafted sugar flowers the baker had spent hours creating shattered, ground into the buttercream, unrecognizably. Trevor lay face down in Tier 3, buttercream packed in his nose, his mouth, his hair. His $3,000 tuxedo, perfectly fitted just last month, was soaked through, ruined. And the microphone was still in his hand, still on, still broadcasting to every speaker in the ballroom. His voice came through, muffled by cake, slurred by drugs, but clear enough. I heard him on the phone giving him money. "Everything that's mine." 300 guests stood frozen, phones coming out of pockets and purses, recording. This was going to be on social media in minutes. Trevor's voice continued, barely conscious. No filter left at all. The bastard's son wasn't even there. "Guess everything I worked for," Olivia was screaming. "Trevor! Oh my God! Trevor!" But she didn't move toward him, just stood there, hands over her mouth, watching her husband destroy himself. Dad was supposed to be drunk. Trevor's words were breaking up now, consciousness slipping. "Supposed to look like a fool, signed the papers. Make him go away." Eleanor Ashford swayed. Howard caught her as her knees gave out. She hadn't fainted. Not quite, but close. Wrong glass. Trevor's voice was barely a whisper now, but the microphone picked it up, amplified it, broadcast it to every corner of the ballroom. I drank the wrong glass. Complete silence. 300 people processing what they just heard. Then chaos erupted, guests shouting, chairs scraping back, people rushing forward or rushing away, no one sure which was appropriate. "Did he just confess to drugging someone?" he said. "Wrong glass. He drugged himself. Oh my God, is he breathing? Someone call 911. I'm recording this. Delete that. Delete it. Phones everywhere. Recording, live streaming, posting. The video would be viral before the ambulance arrived. Brennan wedding disaster would trend on Twitter within the hour. Olivia finally moved, dropped to her knees beside the cake wreckage, trying to pull Trevor's face out of the buttercream. Her Vera wine gown dragged through frosting. She didn't seem to notice. "Trevor, wake up. Please, wake up." but Trevor was unconscious, face down, and $12,500 worth of destroyed art. His breathing was shallow but steady. The drug had won. Frank appeared at my elbow. Jesus Christ. Doug, what just happened? I couldn't answer, couldn't move, just stood there staring at my son, at the wreckage of his wedding, his reputation, his marriage, his life, all destroyed in 60 seconds. Hotel staff rush forward. The manager, Michael Hartley, professional to the core, even in crisis, was shouting instructions. Clear some space. Someone check if he's breathing. Has anyone called 911? But I barely heard it. The noise of the ballroom. He had become white static. All I could see was Trevor, covered in cake and frosting, and the ruins of his own ambition. His confession still echoing through the speakers, his plan exposed to everyone. And through it all, one thought kept repeating. In my mind, I did this. I swapped those glasses, knowing this would happen. Knowing he drugged himself, I turned. The photographer was walking toward me, camera lowered, no longer taking pictures, just walking, steady, purposeful, tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair. My eyes, 300 guests, those who weren't crowding around. Trevor turned to watch, because something about the way he moved commanded attention. Owen Richardson stepped out of the corner where he'd been shooting photos all night, stepped into the light into view, and headed straight for me. My name is Owen Richardson. The voice cut through the chaos like a knife. 300 guests fell silent mid-gasp, mid-whisper, mid-recording. I watched my firstborn son stand in the center of the empty dance floor, his camera hanging loose at his side. I'm the photographer tonight, he continued, his voice steady, despite every eye in the ballroom locked on him. And I'm also Douglas Brennan's son. The gasps that rippled through the ballroom were audible. I heard Eleanor Ashford's sharp intake of breath, Frank Martinez's muttered curse. Whispers exploded like wildfire. What? He has another son. Is that the one Trevor was talking about? Owen ignored them all. His eyes were locked on mine. 15 minutes ago, he continued his words, cutting through the noise. I saw Trevor Brennan tamper with a champagne glass at the head table. I saw him slip something into his father's drink, so I sent a warning, and Mr. Brennan switched the glasses. More gasps. Someone near the back shouted. He knew. Olivia spun toward me, her face contorted with fury. Her $18,000 Vera Wang gown swirled around her like a wedding dress in a horror film. He knew, she screamed. He knew he drugged himself, and you just watched. I stood, my legs felt unsteady, but I forced myself to meet her gaze. Yes, you let him destroy our wedding. Tears streamed down her face, ruining the makeup that had taken 3 hours to perfect. You let him humiliate himself in front of everyone. He tried to poison me, Olivia. My voice was quiet, but firm. He planned to drug me unconscious at his own wedding, so I'd sign documents I'd never agreed to sober. Owen saved my life. I didn't do it for money, Owen said suddenly, his voice cutting through the noise again. He looked at me and I saw something raw in his expression. I didn't do it because I want anything from you, Douglas. I did it because, he paused, swallowing hard, because you're my father, and I couldn't let him hurt you, not even him. The ballroom fell completely silent. I felt my throat tighten. This man, this son I'd only known for 6 months, whom I'd failed for 35 years, had just saved me. Not for inheritance, not for recognition, but because blood still meant something to him, even when I had done nothing to earn it. Owen is my son, I said, my voice carrying across the silent ballroom. His mother was Margaret O'Brien. We were together 35 years ago before she married someone else. I didn't know about Owen until 6 months ago, 2 weeks before Maggie died. I'd been trying to build a relationship with him since Trevor found out 3 months ago, and he saw Owen as a threat. Frank was beside me now, his hand on my shoulder. Doug, why didn't you tell me? I was ashamed, I admitted. Ashamed I hadn't known. Ashamed I'd missed 35 years of his life. Ashamed to tell Trevor because I was afraid of exactly this. Olivier's face was pale. She looked from me to Trevor's unconscious form, still sprawled in the ruins of what used to be our wedding cake. Then to Owen. This wedding is over, she said, her voice shaking. Do you hear me? Over. She yanked her engagement ring off her finger and threw it onto the table. It bounced once, twice, then rolled into the wreckage of buttercream and gold. Leaf, Olivia, I started. No. She held up her hand. Your family is toxic, Mr. Brennan, and I want no part of it. Howard and Eleanor Ashford stood. Eleanor looked like she'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Howard's jaw was set, his expression thunderous. Without a word, they followed their daughter toward the exit. Half the guests stood and followed them. The remaining guests stayed frozen in place, phones still out, recording everything. I turned back to Owen. He stood alone in the center of the empty dance floor, looking small despite his height. Our eyes met across the wreckage of my son's wedding, across 35 years of missed birthdays and graduations and father-son moments I could never get back. "Thank you," I said quietly. "For saving me." He nodded once. Then he turned and walked back toward the shadows, near the entrance, camera in hand. His job done. I watched him go and realized I'd spent 6 months trying to earn his forgiveness. Tonight, he'd earned mine. By 9:15, the paramedics had arrived. I watched 2 EMTs kneel beside Trevor's unconscious form, their gloved hands checking his pulse, lifting his eyelids, assessing the damage. One of them looked up at me. "Sedative overdose." "Yeah." My voice sounded hollow in the nearly empty ballroom. "He'll be fine, but he needs monitoring. We're taking him to Mass General." They loaded Trevor onto a stretcher. Buttercream still matted his hair. Gold leaf clung to his $3,000 tuxedo. His face was pale slack, completely vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen since he was a child. One of the EMTs covered him with a white sheet, and for a terrible moment, it looked like a shroud. Olivier stood beside the stretcher, her Vera Wayne gown wrinkled and stained with tears. She wasn't crying anymore. Her face was blank, empty, like someone who'd used up every emotion they had. She reached up and removed her wedding band, now her engagement ring. Both diamonds caught the light one last time before she set them carefully on what remained of the wedding cake. $12,500 of destroyed art, now serving as a jewelry dish. "I'm not going with him," she said to no one in particular. Eleanor Ashford appeared at her daughter's side, pulling Olivia into a protective embrace. Howard stood behind them both, his face the color of old brick. "How dare you," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "How dare you bring this circus into our family?" I stood, every muscle in my body ocked with exhaustion. "Mr. Ashford, I will pay for everything. The venue, the cake, the catering, all of it." "You think you can buy your way out of this?" Howard's voice rose. "You think money fixes what your son tried to do? What you let happen?" "No." I met his eyes. "But it's the least I can do." Olivia pulled away from her mother and looked at me directly. "For the first time since Owen's revelation, did you know?" she asked quietly. "Did you know he was planning this?" I could have lied, could have protected myself, but I'd had enough of secrets. "No," I said, "but I knew he'd found out about Owen. I knew he was upset, and I did nothing. That's on me." She nodded slowly, then reached down and picked up both rings from the cake wreckage. She pressed them into my hand. "Tell him I hope he gets help." Then the Ashford family left, Eleanor's arm around Olivia's shoulders, Howard's hand on his wife's back, a united front walking away from the wreckage of what should have been the beginning of a new family. The remaining guests were already filing out phones held high, recording every moment. I heard fragments of conversation as they passed. "Veril, by midnight, Brennan wedding disaster. Both sons. Can you believe?" Michael Hartley, the hotel's events manager, approached me cautiously. He looked like a man who'd just watched his 5-star rating evaporate in real time. "Mr. Brennan, what would you like us to do?" "End it," I said. "I'll pay for everything. The full venue cost plus 20% for your staff's trouble." His eyebrows rose. That's $85,000 plus another 17. I know what it costs, Michael." By 10 o'clock, the ballroom was nearly empty. The catering staff had cleared the tables. The string quartet had packed up and left. Someone had swept up most of the cake, though buttercream still stained the hardwood floor in a wide, pale circle. 3 people remained. Frank stood near the head table. His tie loosened his face lined with concern. Owen leaned against the wall by the photographer's station, his camera bag at his feet, and I stood in the center of the empty dance floor, surrounded by $85,000 worth of wasted celebration. Frank walked over and put his hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" I looked at the destruction. For more than $12,000 of cake, reduced to crumbs and frosting. $185,000 of venue flowers, catering music, all of it wasted. A marriage that lasted less than an hour. A family torn apart. But Owen was still here. standing 10 feet away, watching me with Maggie's brown eyes. "No," I said honestly, "but I will be." Owen pushed off the wall and walked toward us. He stopped a few feet away, studying my face. "What are you going to do?" "About Trevor?" he asked quietly. The question hung in the air between us. My 2 sons, one unconscious in an ambulance, one standing in front of me, waiting to see what kind of father I really was. The private room at Mass General was quiet, except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. Trevor lay in the hospital bed, awake now, the 4 drip-feeding fluids into his system to flush out whatever sedative he'd meant for me. His face was cliff. Someone had washed away the buttercream and gold leaf, but his eyes were red-rimmed and hollow. He looked at me as I walked in, then he looked away. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "I'm sorry," he finally whispered. I pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. "You tried to drug me at your own wedding." "I know. You planned to make me sign documents while I was incapacitated." "Did I?" "And instead of asking me what you'd overheard, instead of coming to me like a son should come to his father, you decided to poison me." Trevor's face crumpled. "I heard you on the phone. You called him your firstborn. You gave him $75,000, and I thought you were replacing me. So, you assumed," I said quietly. "You made up a story in your head and never once asked if it was true. What was I supposed to think?" His voice rose defensive. "You had a secret son you never told me about. You were giving him money, calling him your firstborn, like I didn't exist. Owen is 35 years old. Trevor, he's my firstborn. That's not an insult to you. It's a fact." "But the money was a co-signed business loan," I interrupted. $75,000 to help him expand his photography studio. Not a gift, not an inheritance. A loan he's paying back with interest. Trevor stared at me. "A loan? Owen has refused almost everything I've offered him." The loan was the only thing he'd accept, and only because he saw it as a business transaction. I leaned forward. "Do you know what he told me when I offered to buy him a house? He said, 'I don't need your guilt money, Douglas.'" Cliff's face went pale. "So, what does he want?" he asked, his voice small. "A father," I said. "Just a father. Someone who shows up, someone who listens, someone who gives a damn about who he is, not what he can get from me." Trevor closed his eyes. Fresh tears leaked out from beneath his lids. I took a breath. His next part was going to hurt both of us. "You're still my son," I said, "but I didn't realize what you'd become." His eyes opened. "You value money more than you value me, more than you value yourself." I kept my voice steady, and that's partly my fault. "I gave you everything, Trevor. I handed you a job, a title, an apartment, a car. I never made you earn anything. I never let you fail. Dad, so here's what's going to happen. I counted on my fingers. You're taking a leave from Brennan Industries, minimum 1 year. You're going to find a job somewhere else, entry level. No connections, no references from me. You're going to pay off that $120,000 in debt yourself." His face went white. "How do you? I'm your father, Trevor. You think I don't know?" I continued. "You're moving out of that $2,000 a month apartment into something you can actually afford. You're selling the BMW and you're going to live on a budget, like every other 20-some starting out." "You're cutting me off," he whispered. "No." I leaned forward and took his hand. "I'm giving you a chance to become your own man. In 1 year, we'll talk about your future at Brennan Industries. We'll talk about your relationship with Owen. We'll talk about everything. But first, you need to prove to yourself, not to me, that you can stand on your own 2 feet." Trevor was crying openly now, his shoulders shaking. "I ruined everything." "Yes," I said. "You did. Now you're going to fix yourself, and then we'll fix us." He looked up at me through his tears. "Does he hate me?" "Owen." I thought about my other son standing in the shadows with his camera quietly watching, quietly saving me. "He doesn't even know you yet, Trevor. But you'll have time to change that if you want to." "I do," Trevor said quickly. I want to. Be better, then be better." I stood up, squeezing his hand once before letting go. "I'll see you tomorrow. Get some rest." I walked to the door, then stopped and looked back at my son, pale, broken, covered in the consequences of his own choices. "I love you, Trevor. That hasn't changed, but love isn't the same as enabling. It's time you learned the difference." I stepped into the hallway and closed the door behind me. Owen was waiting at the end of the quarter, leaning against the wall with 2 paper coffee cups in his hands. He straightened when he saw me and held one out. "How'd it go?" he asked. "Hard," I admitted, taking the coffee. The warmth seeped into my hands. Necessary, but hard. We walked toward the elevators in silence. The hospital was quiet at this hour, just the soft beep of monitors and the occasional rustle of nurses making their rounds. "You staying at the house tonight?" I asked as we waited for the elevator. Owen hesitated. I could see him weighing his options, weighing whether he was ready to cross that threshold, to step into my life in a real, tangible way. "If that's okay," he finally said. "It's okay," I said. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. "It's more than okay." We stepped inside together, father and son, for the first time in 35 years going home. Week 1. Video went viral. Brennan wedding disaster hit 2 million views in 48 hours. My son's confession. His face planted to $12,000 of cake. Olivia's ring. Toss all of it immortalized on social media. Trevor moved out of his downtown apartment into a $600 studio in Austin. Owen slept on my guest room bed for the first time in his life. Week 2. I did damage control at Brennan Industries. 3 board members called emergency meetings. I told them the truth, all of it. 2 of them understood. One suggested I step down. I suggested he reconsider. Trevor sent me a photo of his first job application, entry-level project coordinator. No mention of his MBA or his previous title. Week 4. Trevor got hired at Morrison Industries, one of our competitors. He texted me a single line. "Starting Monday, 52K a year. I can do this." I texted back, "I know you can." Week 6. Wednesday dinners with Owen became routine. We'd sit at my kitchen table, the one Helen had picked out 20 years ago, and he'd tell me stories about Maggie, how she'd taught him to see light, how she'd scraped together money for his first real camera, how she'd never spoken poorly of me, even when he'd asked. She said, "You didn't know." Owen told me one night, "She made me promise I wouldn't hate you for something you couldn't control." I cried that night after he went to bed. Week 8. Trevor's update came via text. Paid off 8K. Sold the BMW. Driving a 2015 Honda Civic now. It's humbling. I didn't reply immediately. He just stared at that word. Humbling. It was the first time I'd ever heard my son use it. Week 10. Owen invited me to his studio. A converted warehouse space in Cambridge with Florida ceiling windows and photographs covering every wall. Portraits, mostly faces that told stories. "This is my life's work," he said quietly, watching me examine a series of elderly veterans. Not money, not status, just seeing people. I looked at my son, my firstborn, and realized he'd become the man I'd always wanted to be. Week 12. Frank noticed over lunch. "You're smiling more." Yeah, he studied my face. "It suits you." Month 4. August. Trevor had been in therapy for 2 months. He'd paid off $25,000 of his debt, more than I'd expected. He'd gotten promoted to junior analyst at Morrison. He looked different in the photos he sent. Leaner, older, real. His text came on a Wednesday evening. "I'm ready to meet Owen if he's willing." I forwarded the message to Owen. His reply came an hour later. "Public place. You're there, too." Dale, I wrote back. "We met at Café Algier, the same place where Owen and I had our first conversation 8 months ago." Trevor arrived 15 minutes early. I watched him through the window, sitting alone at a corner table, his hands wrapped around a coffee cup he wasn't drinking from. Owen arrived exactly on time. I stood as he approached our table. "Trevor," I said quietly. "This is Owen. Owen Trevor." My 2 sons looked at each other for the first time as brothers. Trevor stood. Hi, Owen replied. Neither of them smiled. Neither of them offered a hand. The air between them was thick with history, with jealousy and fear, and 35 years of missed brotherhood, but neither of them walked away. Trevor spoke first. "I owe you an apology." "You owe Dad an apology," Owen corrected. "You don't owe me anything. We're strangers." "I'd like to change that," Trevor said. "If you're willing." Owen studied him for a long moment. Then he pulled out a chair and sat down. "Coffee fest," he said. "Then we'll see." Trevor sat. I sat. 3 men who shared blood and damage, and the fragile tentative possibility of becoming something like a family. It wasn't warm. It wasn't a movie moment with hugs and tears and instant forgiveness, but it was a start. 1 year to the day. Again. But this time, no wedding, no 6-tier cake. Number 300 guests. Just a Sunday dinner in my dining room, the same room where Helen and I had hosted Thanksgivings and Christmases, and all the ordinary evenings that make up a life. Trevor arrived at 6:30 driving a 2018 Honda Civic that he'd bought with his own money. He wore jeans and a button-down, carried a six-pack of Sam Adams, and looked nothing like the man who'd collapsed into buttercream and confession a year ago. Owen was already there, standing in my kitchen with an apron tied round his waist, stirring something that smelled like garlic and tomatoes. "You cook now?" Trevor asked, surprised. "Maggie taught me," Owen said without looking up. "Figured it was time to use it." We sat around the table. No formal place settings, no servers, just paper plates and bottles of beer, and the kind of casual comfort I'd forgotten was possible. "So," I said, looking at Trevor. "Update." Trevor took a breath. $72,000 paid off. Little more than halfway there. I felt my eyebrows rise. "That's ahead of schedule. Got promoted twice," he said, and there was quiet pride in his voice. "Senior analyst. Now, still at Morrison. They're good people." He paused. "Better than I deserved, honestly." "And therapy?" I asked. "Every Wednesday. Haven't missed one." He looked at Owen. "Dr. Patel says I've got what she calls scarcity anxiety. He spent so long having everything that the thought of losing it made me crazy." Owen set down his fork. "And now I know the difference between having things and being someone." Trevor smiled, a real smile, not the practiced one I'd seen at business. Dingers, turns out I like the second one better. Owen's update came next. Richardson Photography had grown to new assistants, a feature in Boston Magazine, a waiting list for portrait sessions that stretched into September. "Paid off the loan," Owen said, glancing at me. "Ahead of schedule, actually. Doug tried to forgive the interest. I told him no." "Of course you did," Trevor muttered, but there was amusement in his voice, not bitterness. "What about you?" Owen asked, directing the question at Trevor like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You seeing anyone?" Trevor laughed. "Casual. Dating. Nothing serious. Honestly, after the disaster with Olivia, I'm okay being single for a while." He paused. "She's engaged, by the way, to a guy from her firm. I'm happy for her." "You mean that?" Owen asked. "Yeah," Trevi said. "I do. She deserves better than what I was." The conversation flowed after that, awkward in places, careful but real. Trevor asked about Owen's photography technique. Owen asked about Trevor's projects. At Morrison, they didn't hug. They didn't call each other brother. But they passed the garlic bread without being asked and laughed at the same stupid joke I made about my attempt at cooking last week. It was ordinary, imperfect, human, and for the first time in a year, I felt like maybe we were becoming something like a family. Trevor set his beer down and looked directly at Owen. "Owen, I need to say something." The room went quiet. Trevor's hand trembled as he set down his beer. Owen and I both went still. "I owe you an apology," Trevor said. "A real one. Not the half-ass. I'm sorry I gave Dad in the hospital." Owen's expression didn't change, but his posture shifted, listening guarded but open. "When I found out about you," Trevor continued, "my first thought wasn't I have a brother, it was I have competition. I saw you as a threat to everything I thought made me matter." He swallowed hard. "I spent 33 years being handed everything. And when you showed up someone who'd built a whole life without Dad's money, it terrified me." I felt my throat tighten. "You saved him," Trevor said, his voice cracking. "You saw me tamper with that glass and you warned him. You could have let me destroy myself and walked away, but you didn't. So, thank you for being a better man than I was." His silence felt heavy. Owen leaned back, studying Trevor like he was, composing a photograph, measuring light and shadow, looking for truth. "What you did was terrible," Owen finally said. "Unforgivable. Some people would say." Trevor nodded. "But you're trying. You're actually doing the work, and that matters." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever completely, but it was recognition. Trevor's exhale was shaky. "I don't expect us to be close, but if we're going to be brothers, even the complicated kind, I needed you to know." "I'm sorry." Owen nodded. Then something small shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "Complicated sounds about right," he said. And for the first time, both my sons smiled at each other. Small, tentative, real. I sat there watching them and felt something settle in my chest. Family isn't what you inherit, it's what you build. Not through money or names, but through showing up. Through honest conversations over paper plates and cheap beer. Through apologies that cost you your pride. A year ago, Trevor had collapsed into $12,500 of wedding cake and confessed his sins to 300 witnesses. His engagement ended, his reputation ruined, his life shattered. But broken things, when they heal, often heal stronger. Cliff, I said, there's a senior analyst position at Brennan Industries opening in September. You'd report to Frank Schmarket. Salary if you're interested. Trevor blinked. You're offering me a job, an opportunity. What you do with it is up to you. I held his gaze. Only if that's what you want. He was quiet. Then I'd like that. But I want to finish my year at Morrison first. Understood. I turned to Owen Richardson. Photography needs a corporate photographer for the annual report. Send me a proposal, market rate. Owen's lips twitched. Send me the RFP. Trevor laughed. It's going to be weird seeing you around the office. Yeah, Owen said weird. But his tone said maybe good weird. An hour later, after Trevor left, and Owen was loading the dishwasher, my firstborn turned to me. We don't have to be best friends to be brothers. No, I agreed. You don't, but we can figure it out. One Sunday dinner at a time. That's all anyone can ask for. Owen grabbed his jacket. See you next week. Next week. After he left, I stood on my back porch with whiskey looking up at the stars over Boston. The same stars that had been there the night Trevor tried to poison me. It wasn't perfect. We weren't healed. We were still awkward, still learning how to be a family that didn't fit any traditional mold. But we were trying. A year ago, I watched my son destroy a $12,500 wedding cake. At the time, it felt like the most expensive disaster of my life. Now, I think it might have been the best money I never meant to spend. Not because of the cost, but because of what it destroyed. The lies, the entitlement, the toxic patterns, and what it forced us to build in its place. Trevor learned to earn his life, instead of inheriting it. Owen learned that family could mean more than biology. And I learned that being a father isn't about leaving your children money. It's about leaving them whole. Family isn't what you inherit. It's what you choose to build day after day, conversation after conversation, forgiveness after forgiveness. And that's worth more than any inheritance I could leave behind. So that's my story. A $12,500 wedding cake, 2 sons, and one night that changed everything. If you're hearing this and thinking about your own family, the secrets you're keeping, the resentments building, the conversations you're avoiding, let me give you some advice. Don't be like I was. Don't wait for a disaster to force honesty. Don't let pride and fear keep you from the people who matter. I learned 3 hard lessons that night. First, money can't buy character. I gave Trevor everything except the chance to earn his own worth. That was my failure as a father. Second, blood alone doesn't make a family. Owen had every reason to hate me, to let Trevor's plan succeed. But he chose mercy. He chose to save a father who'd never been there. Thank God for that choice. Third, it's never too late to start over. At 60 years old, I thought my family was set. God had other plans. He brought Owen into my life through tragedy and gave Trevor a second chance through consequences. This is a true story, not a fairy tale. Real grandpa stories aren't always about wisdom passed down. Sometimes they're about old men finally learning what their sons already knew. And if you're wondering whether Owen and Trevor ever became close, well, that's still being written. But they show up. And God willing, that'll be enough. If this story meant something to you, if you've got your own complicated family, your own true story of redemption, leave a comment below. Share your experience. And if you think someone needs to hear this, subscribe and share this story with them.